This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
How would you like to get more customers, make more profits, and have bigger breakthroughs? Get Doberman Dan's Profit Boosting Breakthroughs. Normally, this would cost you $98 per month, but right now, for listening to this show, he's giving you a free copy of his Doberman Dan letter. All you have to do is go to DobermanDan.com and sign up to get your free copy now.
Prepare yourself for the uncensored, nothing held back, no BS reality of how business and life really work. Doberman Dan is off the chain.
All right, welcome back to the Doberman Dan Show. What are we calling this show now? Off the chain. It used to be Renegade Entrepreneurs. I don't know, but I decided to take the reins from Doberman Dan for a second because we have a special guest. And Lee, I wanted to thank you because I read your book and geez, I want to remember the name. I hope I'm not screwing it up. But I just read one of your books that Doberman Dan recommended to me, Reclaim the Magic. And there was a part about trusting yourself. And it couldn't have come at a better time where I've made some hard decisions and I was second guessing myself. And I read your words and I was like, oh crap. I made the right decision. I really did. And I know that because Lee said so and Reclaim the Magic. So thank you for that.
You're so welcome. That was my book last year. My new book is called The Magic of Prayers.
The Magic of Prayer. So Dan, I'll let you take it over, but I wanted to, because I know once you get going, I'm not going to get in there. So I had to thank Lee before you took it over.
Are
well,
you
Jonathan,
saying that?
First, I'm very happy that you trusted yourself because frankly, if you can't trust yourself, there's no one you can trust.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ooh, true words were never spoken there. Although nobody's teaching that these days, Lee, or hardly anybody.
I'm teaching it.
So Lee, thanks for being on the show. This is exciting.
My pleasure.
I've known of you for a long, long time, but we didn't really meet until, geez, I lose track of time. It's been a few years back at, I believe it was the Super Conference. And so I've been following you for a while. And yeah, I'm going to let you tell your story in a minute because you truly have a rags to riches story. But the thing that caught my eye most recently is, like I said, I've been following you for a while. You've been partnered up with my original direct marketing mentor, Dan Kennedy, for a while. You guys did the Renegade Millionaire series together. You've been partnered with GKIC for a long time. What, like 9-10 years, right?
Yes, I was with them about 9 or 10 years, and I resigned last year.
Well, so you were, what I knew of your work with GKIC, you were running some really high-end coaching groups for them, for high-performing entrepreneurs. And my understanding of the work you did there was, this was like down and dirty entrepreneur stuff, productivity, performance, mindset stuff. You're coaching them on all this stuff. Everything, having all the, as I call it, all the pragmatic stuff involved in running a business. But then, so I noticed somewhat recently you took a new direction. I guess that coincides with you parting company with GKIC. So I want to hear all about that. But would you first start with giving your rags to riches story, so to speak? That's what I'm calling it, at least.
Okay, sure. I'm glad you asked me that because I really do believe it's very important to know the legitimacy of the people, anybody who takes advice from anyone. So I'll do a very brief story. I will say that in all my books, particularly Reclaim the Magic, which made bestseller, thank God, I tell a very long personal story. But the truth is, I was born and raised in a very small place called Chuckytuck, Virginia. Population 60, with parents who really didn't value girls at all. They only valued males. And I ended up being a very forgotten child. I grew up in a lot of poverty, abused physically, mentally, and emotionally terribly, given no direction, support, or real love. I certainly had no education about success or independence, and certainly no wealth building, because my parents' favorite saying was, if our boat came in, we would be at the bus station. So as you can imagine, there was no environmental support for me thinking anything but poor and get by kind of energy. Frankly, I could never even try out for the cheerleading or anything else after school because we had no money for the uniforms. Even in my high school prom, I remember this clearly. I had to wear this god-awful hand-me-down dress. And I remember it was so awful. When it was time to take the photo, I simply closed my eyes and wished I was somewhere else. The truth is we all have choices. And I knew that I was not going to get support from the family of origin for me. And there are two paths that I could take. You could feel sorry for yourself and be a victim and just, plummet into drugs or alcohol or anything negative, or you could just drown in those circumstances or do something different. So, many people just accept their fate. But I was born with some kind of spark inside of me to want to make something of myself. And I realized very, very young, nobody was going to do that for me. And, the old saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When I was in high school, I was such a wild child, it was incredible, but I signed up to be a librarian helper during my lunch hour, basically just to get the hell out of school. But it changed my life totally because in the library, I read at the age 14, 15, and 16 years old, books like Think and Grow Rich, The Magic of Believing, Psycho-Cybernetics. And those books gave me what my family and none of my environment could give me, which was strategy, hope, encouragement, education, and tools. But the most important thing I got was incredible new mindset that I could do something with myself. I read all these books and biographies that inspired me that no matter how hard or difficult or impossible any kind of reality was, that we literally had the power within ourselves to change that. And so I lived in the library. I worked at everything. I worked from the age 12 years old. And when I was 12 years old, I actually had my first business. I had 37 people working for me in the fields in Chuckytuck, Virginia, chopping peanuts. I worked at Tasty Freeze. I worked at, anything and anywhere people would hire me. And I would always go to the top. I would be the best salesperson. I would be on time. I was always just so excited that somebody was paying me money. And that really created such an incredible work ethic that no matter what I did in life, I always rose to the top because I would do whatever it took. Now, those skills have served me very well in my very, very long career. And that's why I was able to teach entrepreneurs all the nitty gritty of life because, being an entrepreneur is truly a very challenging job. And if you don't have some really fortitude and the ability to get your ass up and do whatever it takes, you will not make it.
Amen.
All these people who are doing this bullshit of 4-hour work weeks, they live in Mars or somewhere. They don't live in the United States.
Right.
Because, I realize people do anything to sell books, and I can be one of those people. However, this is false advertising to the world. I've known you, Dan, through GKIC for a long time. I watched you. I follow you. We all work, but we work smart and we leverage our talents and abilities and skills. So my background, I owned an electronic background music company. I put in huge music systems and sound systems to airports and large buildings at 22 years old. I was in commercial real estate by the time I was 28. I, by the way, hated commercial real estate, but it led me to where I am today because in commercial real estate, I was forced to go out and make speeches. And wow, did I find a talent. Man, can I talk? And so I love the fact that I had all this varied career and tried different things. And I was a professional photographer and I traveled around the world doing landscape photography, which I adored. And everything I've ever done has built upon my true success because everything you do adds skills and talents and abilities and discernment of what works. And I am a big observer of life. I observe people. I watch people. I study people. Like Dan Kennedy and I have been friends for a very long time. I met him when I decided to become a professional speaker. And I will just tell this quick story about him. I went to Phoenix, Arizona. I had no money. I had to borrow clothes and a credit card to get in the hotel. And I went to the National Speakers Association and I thought all this was very fluffy. And Dan Kennedy was across the hall with some title like The Real Business and How to Make Money in Speaking. So I marched over there and he was like word candy. he he lit me up like a Christmas tree. Like, oh my God, somebody knows what the hell they're talking about. And at the end of the day, he had this sign-up sheet, which I had no idea what this meant. He was trolling for clients, of course, but I signed up and I was the I was like the last almost on the list. I was number 4:45 in the afternoon. And so when I sit down to talk to him, he looks at me very irritated and says, I really don't like working with women. I said, I don't give a damn. You've advertised 15 minutes. I'm getting 15 minutes.
That's funny.
And he loved me ever since.
Yeah, because you busted his balls.
I busted his balls so big. And at the end, the next person didn't show up. So I got 30 minutes. And the next thing I knew, he says, oh, come on to dinner. And he took me to dinner and we've been friends ever since.
Oh my gosh. Geez, man, how many people have had their lives changed because Dan Kennedy was trolling for clients with whatever activity he was doing, speaking, publishing something? That's a great story.
Well, it's so true. And it tells a lot about my personality because, don't get between me and what I want. And I tell people that when I negotiate, I'm like, let me tell you something. I will be kind. I will be good, but don't get between me and what I want. Because I want this. I will get it. So I'm a very determined soul.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've known that about you, but I definitely picked up on it and reclaimed the magic. By the way, so just to be totally transparent, I'm still not totally through it. I'm only about 60% through it, but I'm loving it. And I got so many questions just from that I know we're not going to be able to get to them this show. So I'm already going to plant the seed to get you to come back.
I would love to come back. Absolutely.
So, but we're not even close to being done. I'm just planting that seed early. Here's one of the reasons why your backstory fascinates me. All the stuff that you just shared now and all the stuff that's in Reclaim the Magic is because based on my experience, observing that my mother had a similar background and based on my experience as an inner city street cop, with that background, where you should have ended up and where you should be right now is you should have married some abusive guy in a wife beater t-shirt at 18, and you should be living in a trailer park somewhere getting a government check.
Well, yes, I will say from where I grew up in Chuckytuck, Virginia, there's a lot of people that would fit that description. Yes, they allow the circumstances of life to defeat them.
But here's what intrigues me the most. I do understand that when you just wanted to get out of class, so you started working in the library, that you had access to those books. But it sounds like even prior to that, and tell me if I'm reading more into your story than I should be, but it seems like even prior to you getting exposed to that stuff in those classic books, there was a spark inside you that in spite of that really shitty early programming, you had something in you that was different, that told you were going to rise above all this, which I don't see very many people doing. I mean, usually when the programming is that poor that early, hardly anybody overcomes that.
Yes, I remember as a child going out. We always had because I'm a big farm, a lot of dogs. And I would go outside at night and I would look at the stars and I would sneak outside and I would think, I have something I want to do in this earth. I have no idea what it is, but being on the farm is not going to cut it. I clearly did not know what I wanted to do. I spent my entire life in the guidance counselor's office in high school. I mean, it was almost a joke because when they would say as girls, oh, you can be a secretary, you can be a teacher, you can do this, you can do that. And I'm like, oh my God, I'll drop dead if I have to do any of those things. I have to do something else. So the first time they asked anybody who wants to raise their hand to go out and sell the yearbook, I'm the only person who volunteered. And I went out and sold it because I was used to my father saying no to everything. No meant nothing to me. It was just, as the old joke goes, the starting of the sale. And so there was something very, very strong at me about I wanted to get the hell off the farm. I wanted to be independent. And I wanted to be money that I earned because I had lots of opportunities. I used to be a professional model for a while to marry rich guys. And I got lots of offers. And I even had a guy offer me $1 million to marry him. And
wow.
I was not sexually attracted to him. God, I used to pray every night, please, God, let me be sexually attracted to this guy. It would solve so many problems. But I just couldn't. He just repulsed me. And so I am a woman of integrity. So I didn't take his offer. And I'm happy I never married for money, because I will tell you, some of the saddest women on earth and the women who get the sick the fastest are women who are disempowered because they gave their power away for the easy path of what they believe is security. And I didn't take that path. Not that there weren't days sitting in, Atlanta airport for 6 hours that I didn't reconsider a couple of times, but I chose a harder path in life. But my life is mine. I created it. No one is responsible for it but me. And I've done great things, and I've done, a lot of failures in life, but I somehow I feel good that this is my life. This is my adventure. I don't have to answer to anyone but me, really.
You just said something. If we get time, I'd love to come back to. You said the women who give up their power are the ones who wind up getting sick. I'd love to talk more about that. But first, so I gotta find out something else. So, like I said, I knew you'd done all the business coaching with GKIC, and then all of a sudden, I saw you take a different path, which, just being totally transparent, if this were like merely like 2 years ago, I would call it the woo-woo path. And frankly, I'd probably poo-poo it, or just think it's bullshit. Well, things change, Lee.
And thank God, isn't that the truth?
and let's just say things have happened, and I'm way more open to it now. In fact, on my own little journey. So I've got a ton of questions. Like, did you feel like that was your true calling all along, and the other stuff just presented an opportunity, so you went that route? Or was it you were in the business of being a business coach and a speaker and an author and all that about entrepreneur stuff, and then all of a sudden just recently felt the call to start teaching people, more spiritual business practices? I just want to know how this happened.
I wrote a book a number of years ago called Spiritual Power Tools for Successful Selling. In fact, I need to look at what year that was written. And I've never been so afraid in my entire life. This was written in 2005. And the reason I was so afraid is, and I was afraid when that book came out, because I have my main business is called Millionaire Smarts Coaching, which is I am a provider of content for lots of coaches around the world. And because I can chunk out content like crazy, and I love it. And so I never tried as a coach to sell one-on-one so much. I like to sell to centers of influence. It's a lot easier. It's harder in the beginning, but long lasting. And so when I wrote this book, Spiritual Power Tools for Successful Selling, I was attempting to marry my business self with this deep spiritual knowledge that I have had. So it's always been there, Dan. It's just that for so long, when you're this business coach, you don't want people to think you're too woo-woo, even though I will tell you, I have always taught philosophy, metaphysics, spirituality in mainstream language to all those business people. Anybody who went through Peak Performers with me knew that I wasn't just a mindset person, I was also a heart set person, and that I got tired of just teaching the left brain stuff because it's only half the story. And in the business world, people only want the left brain story because they're so damn afraid of the truth. And there's so much truth to the inner part of yourself, the intuition, the gut, the instincts. And I have massive instincts. I'm very intuitive. I mean, I can smell a fraud so far away. I can smell con men. And as you can imagine, in those kind of environments, there's a lot of con men and con women in our world.
There are a lot of sociopathic con men in our world.
And so with the different coaching groups, I would share really deep, profound things. So when the Spiritual Power Tool book came out, I mean, I was so afraid that my Millionaire Smarts sponsors would drop out because they're also left brain. As it was just the opposite. they bought the books by the hundreds because they wanted their groups to see, because the book really should have been called Integrity in Selling. Would have sold a lot more with that title. But I really wanted people to marry their left brain and their right brain together. So even though people call it woo-woo, it's really right brain, imaginative, intuitive, instinctive. You see, the human being has so much more power than they ever give themselves permission to believe that they have, because we're so programmed of powerlessness and this is the way things are done. And people are so afraid to break out of the mold. I mean, it's just like what's happening now in the world is that part of the world wants change and part of the world is fighting to the death not to have change.
Yeah, they're so scared by it. They will fight to the death.
They will fight to the death, and they'll kill anybody who jumps in their way or threatens them in any way. And so the whole political environment really is truly a fight about truth. And so I'm a person who likes to share truth. And as you can well imagine, I've had a lot of criticism and, a million people telling me I would never make it. I just love proving them wrong. And so what I did was after I wrote that book, I started edging out a little bit more and more. And then I wrote a book called Success is an Inside Job, which wasn't about spirituality, but talked about intuition. That book is in its 20th printing right now.
Nice.
It's done so well because it really talks about your self-image. And I give people all the tools. My books are not fluff. They're friggin' tools. And so then I wrote Reclaim the Magic. And this was a hard book. Again, I was a little afraid to put the truth out there, to just lay myself bare of, this is truly who I am. Whether you like me or not, this is who I am. This is the authentic me. And this is all the stuff that I've done before is only part of the story. The productivity, the mindset, the whole performance stuff is only half the story. That if you're not using your brain to actually remember, we don't see with our eyes. We actually see with our brain. We have 4 volts of electrical chemical current in our brain. And every thought that you have, good or bad, right or wrong, true or false, imprints a picture on your brain. The purpose of the brain is to match the picture that's in the brain with reality. So success isn't like start at the beginning of a book, go to the middle, and then go to the end. Success is literally imprint in your brain the images, the messages, the pictures of what you want, and then let that integrate into your intuition, your instincts to guide you. Are you on the right path? Is this the direction you should be going in? And what I was sharing with people was that intuition isn't the bolt of lightning in the sky we would all really, really like. Intuition is a whisper. It is a flutter. It is a soft message. It doesn't come on a regular, when it comes in a very distinct way. And I've done products on intuition, and my intuition products are not woo-woo. They're very much about business. I think anybody in business who isn't using their instincts and intuition is screwed, because there's so much illusion in the world. And so I've trained my body to feel, so I shouldn't say trained. I've acknowledged the messages, the signals that I get in my body and mind, heart about things. And as long as I follow those, I'm great. The minute I deviate and override my behavior with my left brain, programmed brain, I am screwed, because I can get an intuition. I just had this recently. And even though I teach this stuff, I still mess up. I got the intuition not to do business with someone. And then I was bombarded with all the, here's the 19 reasons this person is great, and all their background and, all this. And I had all these influencers who basically I stopped listening to the inner part of myself and listened to the external world. And that did not work out well for me. And I laugh about it now because we all experience that. But the real message that I give people is you have a guiding energetic inside of yourself. You can call it God. You can call it Lois. I don't care. It's in there. And, infinite intelligence, your, creator, whatever.
Can I not call it Lois? Because that reminds me of Family Guy. So
yes.
Okay.
So, I'm just making a joke that I don't really care. If you look at my books, when I talk about God, I gave like 25 or 50 ways people call God. But whatever you call it, inside of yourself, there is an internal compass.
All right. So I know you're really digging our chat with Lee Milteer. And you know how we do things around here. We got to keep it short and sweet. So we'll be back next week with part 2 of the interview between Dan and Lee. Thanks for tuning in, K9 Crew, and we'll be back in your earbuds next week. Thanks for listening, and remember, if you want to create rivers of revenue from your existing customers, then the next thing you need to do is go to DobermanDan.com. He's giving away a free copy of his $98 per month Doberman Dan letter just for listening to the show. Go to DobermanDan.com now and sign up for your free issue.
This is the podcastfactory.com.